Can you hear me? No. Back in.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory and call again, or ask your operator for assistance. Your call cannot be completed. Your call cannot be completed. Your call cannot be completed.
Okay. Oh, okay. Where'd you go? All right. So you can hear me? Let's see. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Hold on. Any suggestions? Can hear you loud. Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, now you can. Huh.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Okay. Can you hear me still?
Yep, loud and clear.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry about that. It said my headphones were plugged in. Then all I had to do was unplug them, and then plug them back in, and it worked. So
good deal.
Weird how that works, but
all good.
Cool. Well, thanks for getting on. I appreciate it.
No. Thanks for having me. This is really cool. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this worked out. So normally how I roll with these podcasts is we just flow right into it, and if we get on a tangent, just roll with it. I'm really into specific examples, like I think it's really cool to talk about trust and how we need to build trust around with athletes, but I'm more interested in how do we actually do that? What is the strategy to literally building trust, whether that be, having them over for a team dinner, or what kind of phrases do you use? So the actual diving into the actual specific strategy, not just the overarching concept of
100%. Yeah. You're speaking my language.
It's kind of funny because last year 2 years ago, I went to a bunch of different baseball conferences, and that seemed to be the real, I don't know if that's how it is every year. It's only been 3 years now that I've been going to these baseball conferences.
Right.
But the first year I went, it seemed like everybody was talking about build trust with your athletes, build trust with them. As soon as you get their trust, then that's when the real teaching begins.
Yep.
And I'm like, thank you. But how do we do that? Like,
Right.
like, what are you saying to your athletes? Like, give me a specific example. Tell me a story or something like that.
Right.
So
Okay. Awesome.
yeah, that's one of the things that I really, and like in my job with mental performance,
Right.
like it's all about taking actual strategies to coaches
Okay.
and sharing those things. So, but one of the strategies that we were briefly talking about was, the why behind why your guys are playing for your team.
Okay.
And so having a mission behind that. So
100%.
how do you go about getting to their why with them? What's like your process for getting down to that, the reason why they're there and playing the game for
Well, I think that's the number one thing you talk about, trust. And I think when you can kind of resonate with them a little bit and you explain what your why is too, behind me and like in the video you see here, there's a ton of plaques and whatnot, and we've had a ton of success in our program. To me, that's a testament to guys that have bought into trust, that have trusted each other. They've trusted us as coaches and we trusted them, but we've had to build those relationships. And really it comes down to one central thing, and that is, what is your why? What's going to get you up every morning to do? We're at a junior college, and you look out my office window right now, there's a harvested cornfield. Like, we're 2 miles outside of town of Mason City. So like, what's going to get you up every single day and walk across that path, that we have 2 man-made like lakes here on campus that is probably feels like -30 today. But like, what's going to get you up every single morning and go to class, go to train, and do it all over again each and every day? And I think when you can build that dynamic of what their why is inside of our group, and when you can build that dynamic as a team, yeah, they've got their outside whys, whether it's a family member or I want to play professional baseball, I want to make money doing this, I want to get that scholarship to school, down the road, whatever it may be. Hey, I want to be a part of a winner, whatever it may be. When they have that, but then they understand what their why is for each other. And we talk about, what's love, okay? And there's a difference between liking each other and loving each other. Like, you don't necessarily have to like each other within our confines of our program, because there's going to be some guys that, hey, man, I get along with that guy pretty well. And there's some guys like, okay, yeah, I know he plays left field, okay? But at the end of the day, when you sacrifice for each other and you hold each other accountable on a daily basis and you give up yourself for one another and hold each other accountable, to me, that's what love really is. And that comes down to, okay, what's your why? What's going to get us on the same page to go to bat for each other every single day? So to me, that comes down to, we talk about it really almost, I wouldn't say every day, but a big focal point to our process and our preparation on a daily basis is understanding, hey, what's your why? And that might evolve over time.
Mm-hmm. So like when you're getting down to the why with them, or like when you first started on campus,
Yeah.
and they come in, like say you get a freshman that comes in, and what's the first thing you say to him in terms of like getting him to realize the why and why he's actually there? Because I mean, I always say start somewhere. So like whatever the first thing is in your mind, like start with that. And it doesn't mean you have to be held to that though. So
Right.
Like, how do you kind of shape their why over time, or do you come back to it like every week, or what's your process behind that?
So just that right there, it is a process. And so each and every day we begin in the classroom. Okay. We start in our classroom in our rec center. So it's a nice transition to what we do during our training. So this is a big part of what you would call your life skills, mental training, if you will. Okay. Or just what I would just call more like your lifestyle. You're developing your lifestyle here in this classroom. So there's going to be something that we're going to talk about of our daily process, of what we did yesterday or what we're going to do today. But then there's going to be something that pertains to what process really is, or, our 3 Ps are process, preparation, and perform. All those work together in synergy to be able to be a winner, to be successful. And that doesn't pertain just to baseball. Hopefully they carry that throughout their life, because they're going to deal with a lot more important things than hitting a baseball or throwing a baseball eventually when baseball's over. but where they can lean on this process. And so the things that we talk about right away is, how are you going to edit your life right now? To be a college athlete, you're going to have to edit your life in a lot of ways, and understanding what's really important. There's really no off time for us as a baseball program. And there's a lot of really good programs around there, junior college, 4-year, Division I, whatever it may be. And I mean, we're 9-10 months out of the year. There's not a whole lot of time where we're away from each other anymore. Even right now, this is probably the biggest part of the year for us in terms of skill set, physically, but also ability and mental more than anything. This is where they're really going to define their year. And so you kind of paint that picture for them of, you're going to have to edit your life a little bit. You're going to have to make this your lifestyle. And your lifestyle, that goes from sleep to diet to how you carry yourself, what is your appearance, to how you train, and then how do you deal with those processes. And so that's kind of how we paint the picture for them in the beginning. And that develops their why. Okay, so I'm going to get up at 7 a.m. every morning to go hit. Well, why am I doing that? And you'd be surprised where, hey, don't just come down here and take 100 swings to say take 100 swings, because you might have taken 99 that aren't going to help you regardless. So again, we talk about being intentional with your intent. The intent is more than just a physical thing, hitting a ball hard or, swinging a bat hard or throwing a ball hard. You have to be intentful with how you're going to go about your why and how you're going to go about your process throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month.
Mm-hmm. What's the most common why that you hear from the guys?
I think in the beginning, it's, well, they all come to a place like Knife because they want to play Division I baseball. Okay, so a lot of times it's that, or it's family. It's a family member, or I'm doing this for somebody else, and that's cool and all. Okay, like they think that's good, but I think it comes down to it where they have to be a little selfish. Like, you're doing this for yourself, man. You have to learn, like, if you really, really want to do this, and that's where it comes down to kind of editing your life a little bit and making this your lifestyle. You're going to figure it out if you want to do this for yourself. And so that's not a selfish thing. I think that's just an awareness thing more than anything.
Mm-hmm. And I always talk about like we over me. Everybody wants to talk about we over me. And if you think about it in like a fraction form, we over me, you need a strong me in order to carry the we. So it's exactly. Like you need to be working on yourself. You need to take care of yourself first, because if you're not taking care of yourself first, then you're bringing your B game, you're bringing your C game to everybody else. And that's not fair to them. And it's definitely not fair to you.
No doubt, especially the sport that we play. I mean, there's somebody else performing, yet you need to be ready to do your part when it comes your time. And then that's why the beauty of it being a team sport that it is in baseball, there's so much me, yet it is we. And I like how you put that, because again, you got to take care of yourself, and you have to really have an awareness for yourself as a student athlete. It's just as a human being more than anything too. And understanding too, that there are things that are bigger than yourself as well, to help you grow. I think that's a big part to what we're teaching is they're learning so much about themselves, but that there's other things that are bigger than the problems or the issues that they have as people. And when they can outreach, if you will, or they can, kind of give themselves up and sacrifice, I think that's when they really learn what, the true spirit of what we're trying to do is really try to identify those whys.
Mm-hmm. What like resources do you come about or do you use with your athletes in terms of sleep and diet? Because those are probably the two hardest things to get athletes to do is sleep more or sleep regularly, and then like improve their diet, because every athlete, especially coming out of high school, like they can get away with eating Mickey D's and Burger King like every day and still be putting on muscle and they think they're doing well, but then long term they're setting themselves up for failure. I was actually listening to this podcast the other day about how it wasn't a podcast actually, it was do you know who Dr. Wayne Dyer is? Yeah, so I was listening to his No Limits CDs. They're in my truck, and and so every time I get in my truck, those play. But he was talking about how when you're growing up and you're going through athletics, like the point of that is to create lifelong habits of working out and living that healthy lifestyle. But then, all the 40 and 50-year-olds are sitting on their couches at home watching football, talking about the good old days and with a huge beer belly. And like, they aren't actually living out those principles that were tried to be ingrained in them. So it's like, how do you actually change their sleep and diet and get that through to them that, hey, like, this is going to help you now for sure, but it will help you down the road. We're setting you up for a lifelong of success.
Yep. Well, I mean, there's a lot of resources that we have here on campus, which are really beneficial. And we bring those resources to us. We bring those people to us to try to really educate our guys, one, just on sleep and the quality of performance due to lack of sleep or the quality of performance due to substantial sleep, but then also diet. And that's really hard here. And I'm not knocking NIAC in any stretch, but any one of our student athletes will tell you it's really difficult. Our food service maybe isn't the healthiest at times. So they've got to really kind of work around that a little bit. But there's a guy named Harvey Martin with the Mind Strong Project. I don't know if you know Harv, but I met Harv probably 5-6 years ago now. And Harv has opened my eyes to the mental game in terms of breath and performance. And I know you've touched on a lot of that with your podcast, and it's been awesome. But also just how breath can really enhance your performance, especially in times of, where there are high stress, anxiety moments as a student athlete, but just overall, just human performance more than anything. But again, breath can also help kind of down regulate you as well, to be able to have better sleep performance, have better recovery habits. And so we brought in Harv last year to really touch on, again, he has a whole series that he has as far as mental skills performance and just overall personal performance, but just also the qualities of proper breath for activation to get that heart rate elevated, but also to downregulate too, which is probably the hardest because, again, how many kids, I mean, we see it all the time. They're going to run down the convenience store and they think, yeah, I'm going to house this Bang energy drink and I'm going to go out and throw 7 innings today. Well, yeah, that might work just for, a brief period of time, but that coming down from that is going to be so difficult. So again, that's going to affect your sleep cycle, and that's going to affect your performance cycle more than anything. There was one article that recently just came out with, we're really close to the Minnesota border. So, the Minnesota Gophers right now are a really, really big story, and just how they have kind of revisited their sleep patterns and how important they've made it and how they've moved practice into the mornings. And then they have their afternoons to take care of things with academics and whatnot. So they're not having this big rush of worry or adrenaline in the afternoons, with practice and preparation. And now they're having to down-regulate where they have, poor sleep patterns. And now the performance has been deteriorated. So again, we try to, and I can't remember the Twitter, it's Penn State actually. They've been coming out with a lot of, I think their sports science Twitter page. They've been coming out with a lot of tips as far as sleep, how to recover, proper recovery, what you should be doing. And we've shared that with our guys, and it's been really, really helpful for them.
Yeah, I think one of the big things you just brought up there was showing them kind of what the best are doing.
Yeah.
And, that's huge right there, because it's one thing for you to tell them, hey, you guys got to improve your sleep. But then it's another thing for them to see, the Gophers crushing their sleep and then crushing it out there on the field as well.
Yep.
And I always talk about the 3 biggest athletes. Everybody knows these guys, LeBron, Tom Brady, and Roger Federer. Each one of those guys gets 10 to 12 hours of sleep every single night.
Yep.
Because if you're going to go, I always say there's no such thing as overtraining. It's all under recovery. If you're going to go that hard, if you're going to train that hard, you have to be recovering just as hard, if not harder.
Yep.
And that's a huge part of it. So
who was it that tweeted it out yesterday? But, you wonder why you're sore. Then don't go crush McDonald's, sleep for 5 hours. And I can't remember the other one, but it was like, I need to show this to a couple of our guys because they want to know why they're sore on a daily basis. And like you said, you're going to go that hard. You're going to train that hard. You're going to hit for an hour, and then you're going to go do a lift for an hour and a half, and then you're going to have recovery work, and then you're going to go do your throwing and all this. But then you're just going to go back and crush Fortnite for 3 hours and stay up late. Like, and only get 3 to 4 hours of sleep, then you're doing your body and you're doing your teammates no justice either. I mean, you're just hurting, because they're expecting you to do the same, to bring it each and every day as well. So then it becomes a culture thing. So now they're holding each other accountable too, and almost having competitions of how much sleep they can get. Then it becomes a really positive too. And again, it helps the entire organization, the whole culture.
That's awesome that they're competing. It's kind of like that. My girlfriend and I, we have these watches that track our sleep.
Yep.
And I mean, it's the same way. You wake up in the morning, you check your app, like,
Yeah.
oh man, I got 8.5 hours of sleep with 3 hours of REM sleep. Like,
Right.
I'm gonna absolutely crush the day. And then, so okay, I got another question. What happens when they, like, you're out on the road, you're coming back from a long trip,
Yep.
and they are forced to then get only like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and you guys
Yep.
know you got to practice the next day. How do you mentally get them ready for that, or how do you make them realize that, like, hey, this is sometimes what has to happen?
We're really intentional with that, honestly, because there's some, especially early in the year, and we've found this to be just in our overall performance. I've actually had a talk with a few other coaches in our conference, because we're all doing the same thing in February and March. We're all traveling 5+ hours to go play baseball, because we just can't up here in the north. And so we got to go as far as we can to go play some games, but not too far, because we don't want to break the budget either. So we're getting back on, Monday morning at 2 a.m. These guys have to get up to go to class. Okay. But we still have to stay on top of our training, because we turn around and play again the following weekend. So being intentional with how we structure practice, how we structure lifts, and really you're trying to upregulate them slower throughout the week. And I think it's really elevated our performance as the week has gone on, to where we're building that up to the following weekend. It gets harder because, again, we're on budgets here. We're at a junior college. But I have come to find that the more that we invest then into what we are putting into our bodies, we're not eating McDonald's, we're not eating Wendy's. Hey, you know what? We're going to go the extra mile to try to find a Chipotle. I'm sorry. And I'm 40. I'm trying to look after myself too. Like, the last thing that I want to do is get all fat and, out of shape and be that guy that's sitting on the couch talking about the glory days with my beer gut. But
the hypocrite.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to make it my lifestyle as well too. And if I'm going to talk the talk, I have to walk the walk. And so I think it's really helped our daily performance and how we continue to gain. It's helped in the weight room as well. And I think more than anything, when you're talking about that too, is you wonder why we have so many injuries maybe early in the season. I think it comes down to the lack of sleep. We're pushing them to the limit. We have to back off, and that's okay. That is okay if we focus on the right things on the right days to give them that substantial amount of recovery to be able to then go perform to the levels that we want them to perform.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's awesome. You're one of the few coaches I've ever heard that says, we're going to spend a little bit more money on diet here so that we can save ourselves down the road.
Absolutely.
Like, you don't hear that a lot, because the normal, what's the normal diet? After a double header, you drive 8 hours and you share a box of pizza with your teammate next to you. So,
because it's convenient, it's easy. And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we wonder why we feel like crap, or, our performance is lacking. Again, how you feel your body is so important. And I will say this about this generation especially, is they're so in tune with that though. So it goes kind of back into, you asked the question earlier, how you kind of regulate things or educate them on it, whether it's an app like the MyFitnessPal app, when we got a guy trying to lose weight. How do I lose weight? Well, you need to track it, man. If you're not seeing it, and you're not being honest with yourself about it, then you're not going to see the progress. Or gaining weight, doing it the right way, being able to track it. And in this generation, like, we all can't live without these. They especially can't. This is how they communicate, how they get their information. And I think it's really cool, to be honest. There's some that really want to, take this away from them. And it's like, that's their sole source. Well, we have to adapt to that. And I think when you're trying to educate people and being able to track sleep and track performance and track diet performance, this thing is awesome.
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like when you take a cold shower in the morning, you kind of have to lean into the cold, and you just have to
Yep.
accept it in order for it to kind of not be cold anymore. It's a paradox. So like
Right.
with the phones, the same way. It's like we don't want them to be on their phones, and I mean, research shows like try to stay off social media as much as you can, but at the same time, like it's such a good tool, and
Yep.
if it's used properly, it can benefit you and it can help you. And if you use it properly with your kids, like they're going to be on board with it because like you
Absolutely.
said, it's on them 24 hours out of the
Yeah.
day, honestly.
Yeah. It's how they
Um,
get the information, and they want it instantaneously. But I think it's also how they're going to get their information and understand the why. Okay, why am I doing this? They want to know why. So they're going to go figure that out. I think in my generation, it was like, well, you're going to go do this just because I said so. Okay. Let's go do it then. And if I see some progress, I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm bought in. Now it's, hey, we want you to do this. Here's why. And they're going to go research and try to validate that too. But I also think that can speed up the learning process. It can slow it down too and create some problems, but I think it really speeds up the learning process for them. And then they become very self-sufficient. And then I think as a coach, it takes so much off of you to where now that athlete grows, and then they develop it goes back to your question. Okay, what's your why? Well, that might change a little bit then, because they just have a better understanding and better awareness.
mhm. Do you have like another app that you guys use frequently?
Um, there's a bunch of sleep apps that our guys use. That's really about it that I'm aware of that we use in general. But again, I mean, there's some other performance stuff that we use in terms of whether it's blast motion and Rapsodo, and we try to get those numbers to our guys all the time in terms of just skill set performance. But when it comes to just into sleep and recovery, we try to educate them as much as we can. And our trainer and our strength coach does a really, really good job with that.
I pressed my mute button on accident.
My wife does that to me all the time. So
what I was saying though is there's this coach Joe Kinsella out of Lake Forest. It's a D3 softball team, and he has his girls listen to a 3-minute headspace meditation every single day before practice, and they're so low on space. I mean, when I was there were like 8 girls warming up in the hallway where they're literally shoulder to shoulder and almost touching the wall. Then you have, while they're warming up, like when they go past, there's other girls doing band work to get their shoulders ready. Yep. And then there's another group inside the room right next to them in the classroom listening to their headspace audio for 3 or 5 minutes.
That's awesome.
And like coaches always talk about how we want quality and quantity. And like that's a great way to start getting higher quality reps out of your players, is like building their focusing strength. So, and that's what meditation does. So, success isn't about your ability to focus. It's more about your ability to refocus.
Absolutely.
And so that's what meditation does. And I thought that was really cool. That's another app that he implements into his daily practice. And a lot of coaches, going back to like how we don't want our phones, or like they don't want the phone as a distraction, but when you're using it as a tool and something that, you've shown them, hey, here's why we're doing this. Like they're going to throw in their headphones, listen to that meditation, and then get on to the next part of practice. So I think that's really cool. You're like
very cool.
one of the few coaches, like I said, that is on board with that, which is again really cool. So
yeah.
One thing that you brought up a lot was accountability. I think that's a huge part of today's. That's a big challenge with a lot of coaches today. Like, how do I get my kids to hold each other accountable? And I guess that's my question to you. Like, what's one way that you've found is productive in getting your kids to hold each other accountable?
We think about today, actually. So we have a classroom time that I think we spend a lot of time in there, and that isn't to have me talk the entire time. It's open forum. But we have I don't have captains per se, but we have somewhat of a leadership council. And so we've slowly built this up to what we feel is kind of the building blocks and the foundation of our program that we want to, build on. And that is purposeful authenticity is number one. Like, you have to be authentic in what we're doing. And we've all had that guy on our team that, is the verbal guy that's going to try to get everybody fired up. But at some point, like, it's not very authentic. So I think being authentic with what you're doing, and you don't have to be this verbal guy. It can be that soft-spoken guy as well. But the way that they're coming in to work and get after it each and every day really kind of speaks for themselves. But to be able to, I think, empower your coaches, for one. I'm losing 2 guys to professional baseball. They're going to be leaving us in January. Brett Degani, our pitching coach, is going to the Yankees, and our hitting coach, Sean Schlechter, who's been with me for 8 years, is going to the Minnesota Twins. And people are like, "Oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And it's like, well, we'll figure it out. But let's celebrate this, because to me, I'm not a micromanager. I'm a caretaker of a program. I'm going to allow them to grow. I'm going to allow them to fail too. That's how they grow. To be able to gain traction in their profession, to become better coaches, better people, better human beings, to get opportunities like this, much like what we're trying to do with our players. And that's, again, grow, fail here, because you do have time to fail at a junior college. Find yourself, understand your why, to where ultimately you can move on. And so when you empower people that way, and you give them an ownership, or you give them some type of piece to the program, now they begin to hold each other accountable. The self-accountability more than anything, but then the accountability of the others in the organization. If you, like myself, are just, again, micromanaging this, coming down with this, you must do this, that's not leadership, in my opinion. Leadership is being collaborative. It's understanding the pulse of your group. And that a lot of times comes down to one word, and that's communication. And communication, to me, is so important. We try to meet with our players on an individual basis at least once a month, and it's just a check-in. Hey, man, how are things going? How you feeling about this? And sometimes it's not even about baseball. It can just be, hey, how's classes? Everything good back home? How are you feeling? How are you progressing? And really, it keeps a pulse on things. And a lot of times you come out of those meetings, and that really adjusts the lessons that you want to teach in the weeks to come in that classroom, or how, hey, this is how we're going to practice this week. This is how we're going to set up our training, because everybody's got that feeling of we're a little bit tired, or we're not pushing it hard enough, whatever it may be. So I think that's how you develop accountability, is you give them ownership and you communicate. It doesn't have to come from the top down. It's a collective effort. It's a collective effort and collaboration.
Do you have any specific activities that you guys do, or specific questions that you ask them to give them that ownership, or to help them help each other hold themselves accountable?
Oh yeah. A lot of times you kind of make them vulnerable, honestly. Yeah, we call each other out, and that's not a bad thing. I think it was so my former assistant coach, my former hitting coach, Pete Lortzen, is now with the Cleveland Indians. He's a lower level hitting coordinator. And when Mickey Callaway was the pitching coach with the Indians, and I think they won 21 straight at the time. I think it's still an MLB record. He said every single day, and this is a Navy SEAL type deal too, every single day they would go to the bullpen, before BP, it was the entire pitching staff, and it was all hands on deck, but anything goes. So if you disagreed with a pitch that they threw in the 7th inning, you called them out on that. And again, it wasn't like a personal attack. It was just about, hey, you need to do this better. And again, everything goes. Everyone's, from Trevor Bauer to Kluber to anyone. You could see where maybe your lack of performance was, or maybe you would celebrate somebody's successes too. And that's how they grew as a pitching staff. And again, develop that accountability, not only with each other, but themselves. And so what we'll do is, we might say, hey, tell us, what are your biggest fears? Especially with new guys coming in, they fear a lot of things, where a lot of times they just need to get out of their own damn way. Okay. And a lot of their fears are the self-fabricated stuff that really is just stuff that they're making up, and it's not really true. And when they come to realize that a little bit, other guys in the room understand, I got the same fear, man. Okay. So that is okay. And so there's an acceptance, and there's just kind of depressurized feeling in the room, and they come out of there feeling great. Or hey, one time we just said, hey, where are you lacking right now to this team? And anything goes, and that goes coaches included. We'll call ourselves out where we need to be better. And when you're able to open that up and it's not a personal attack, and that's hard for guys to understand, then now it becomes that much easier to go over to a teammate and say, hey man, I think you need to be doing this. And guys will listen now. But you have to kind of hold up your end of the bargain too. So we spend a lot of time together as well. We're on a bus a lot together. We do a lot of team activities together away from the field, whether it would be, going to, so one of the things that we did as a fundraiser over the last couple of years, we go rake people's yards. We go rake leaves.
Classic.
Yeah, exactly. So JUCO, right? But it works.
I did it at Indiana State, so
See? There you go. Yeah.
I think it might be a baseball thing.
Absolutely, but you learn how to work a little bit. You learn how to work together, and you kind of figure out who your true leaders are, who has potential to lead, and who just needs a little help of letting that ego down a little bit, or letting kind of those insecurities down. As silly as that sounds, by raking a yard, you can figure out a lot of that stuff. For instance, this weekend, I had probably, the weather's really changing here in Iowa. It's been really inconsistent, but we had a nice weekend. I just said, hey guys, there's like 6 yards that we got to do. I emailed it out all to them. And that goes back into communication too, and I'll touch on that in a second, but I emailed it all out to them. And I just said, I don't care how you do it. I don't care when you do it. Just get it done. Like within 30 minutes, they had like a poll out to the entire team of times, who's going to do this, and it was just done. And that really showed me that, okay, when you empower people to be leaders, things that maybe you don't need to deal with as a coach sometimes that can kind of suck the life out of you a little bit. Again, it's about empowering them. They went and just got the job done. So on a daily basis too, I think you need to build awareness when it comes into accountability. So when anything that we're doing on a daily basis is emailed out, usually by 10 o'clock in the morning to our team, that whether we're going to have a training session, we're going to have individuals today, or, hey, we got a team meeting here and this is what we're going to discuss. When they know, they can build that into their daily routine as well. Now you have awareness. There's a lack of just distractions and whatnot. They can organize their day, and they kind of get into a mindset too of, okay, here's what we're going to do today. I've got to be in that mindset.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So you send out the plan for the day by 10 o'clock every day to the guys.
Yep.
So then, like, if they show up and they don't know what's going on, you're like, hey man, like, we sent out that email.
Yep.
You had to be here at this time and you weren't, and now they're being held accountable to checking their email every day and making sure that they're on board with that. And
that's where I'll ask, hey, you forget how to read? And when guys hear that, all of a sudden you see heads just turn like, oh gosh, who didn't read the plan? Herg's going to be pissed. Yeah. I mean, that's part of your duties is, hey, here it is. You want to know what's going on. Your teammates are expecting you to read that too. I think what's really cool, they have an entire team group chat. If, we're getting ready to go on a trip, or, we're trying to get stuff set up for practice. This was interesting this fall. So we're in a unique situation. We have our rec center here on campus, but then we have to travel about 10 minutes for our stadium. It's in town. And so what's nice is we transition from the classroom to the cages, indoor activation, all that stuff can be done in our rec center. And then when we go to our stadium, well, we got to bring bats, we got to bring balls, we got to bring our pitching machines, we got to bring all our stuff. Well, a couple guys, it just always ended up getting thrown on them. Well, they were getting pretty ticked off. And again, you got the pulse of the group on you, you're hearing that. And instead of guys complaining, I just said, you can't just be complaining all the time. You've got to come up with a solution. So as a leader, you have to have a solution. So again, instead of me intervening and saying, I'll take care of this, no, you guys are going to learn how to grow, how to lead right now. Within the next day, they had a spreadsheet duties for every single guy. So sometimes when we have a change of plans real quick, and guys maybe are in my office or they see me, they'll be like, hey, we'll take care of that. They put it out in the group chat. Everyone knows. And to me, I appreciate that, because then it's one less thing that I got to worry about. But again, you're empowering them. You're giving them ownership into the organization.
So take me back to the time when you weren't giving them power, or when you were not empowering your players, because it sounds like you got the system down right now, but like
Yeah.
take me back to when you didn't have the system down and when you were like, okay, I need to figure something else out because I'm getting burnt out on being a coach right now.
Yeah.
Like with me having to do all these things.
So kind of the history of our program, this is my 8th year as head coach, my 16th year at NIAC. But in 2013 was my first year as head coach, and we had a pretty average season up till postseason. And we ended up winning our first ever regional tournament in school history. We went to the first World Series appearance in school history. And what was really unique about that is we got to a point during the season, I remember we got swept on a Saturday. And we came back, and our assistant coaches, Pete Lorton and Sean Schlechter, were sitting with me in our locker room, and I was really frustrated. And again, you get to this like, man, we teach them all this stuff, and then they just don't understand it. And Pete said it. He goes, I think we're getting too consumed with the scoreboard and the wins and losses, and we need to get back to our process. And then it was right. You know, we had to wake up the next day, and we just had to stick to our routine and stick to our processes. And we ended up going all the way to the World Series for the first time in school history, and it kind of put us on the map. Well, the following year, we lost about every guy off that team. So the following year, we had a brand new team.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So a lot of the gray hairs that I have probably come from that team. We had some injuries and whatnot, but it was in terms of wins and losses, the worst season we ever had here. I think we were like 25-31. But again, it was really difficult throughout the year, but we got toward the end of the season. All we kept doing was sticking to that process. And we made a little bit of a run and kind of salvaged our season, if you will. But at the end of that season, we sat down as a staff, and it's me as a recruiter, as a fundraiser, as a father, as a husband, as a caretaker of a program, and as an administrator. I'm a director here at the college in my other job. There's so many things that we have to do. So I was trying to do them all. And so I go to these two and say, how can I be better? How can we run this better? And it wasn't this slap in the face, but it was a hard realization for me that I have to empower more. I have to give more responsibility and trust. And if you do that and you continue to progress with that, with whether it's assistant coaches, managers, players, it's going to elevate their performance, but it's going to elevate their investment into your program, and it becomes theirs. They take ownership to it. So we really left that meeting that day. How are we going to recruit better? How are we going to train better? How are we going to organize our daily practices and our daily process better? And that's where we really evolved with how we train, whether it be through driveline, weighted bats, weighted baseballs, different weight training, and that's evolved with us too. We went on to have 2 record-breaking seasons. We won 49 games the next year, went to the World Series. The following year, we hit 130-some home runs, won 47 games, went to another World Series, and we've had all those teams, like 3 guys in professional baseball, numerous guys to Division I. And again, it's like, okay, we became relevant, but we had to change our processes and our thought process in order to do that. But really just change how we structure the daily practices and processes of our program.
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing story, and that's awesome that like you guys stuck to the process, had a good season, and then the next season was terrible.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, let's just stick to the process, trust the process. And like, that's you guys literally going back to the beginning, like walking the walk and not just talking the talk. Because a lot of coaches might, when they don't start to see the wins and they're like, man, like we really believe in this process, but we're not seeing the wins. Let's change the process. And it's like, if you really believe in it, just keep working it and keep pounding away, and eventually, it'll pay off. But
Absolutely.
It's like staying in that day-to-day grind and the process. So like, what is your day-to-day process at a kind of a high level?
So for us, we're gonna, this point in the year, we're more in our individual phase, but in the fall, guys are going to get, as a coaching staff, we're going to meet in the morning, and we're going to try to have this plan out to our players by 10 o'clock. That's the goal. Doesn't always happen that way, but we want to get it out to them. And it's funny though, like you'll get about noon 12:15, guys are talking at lunch around the table. Man, what's going on with Herg today? Like, well, man, are we in trouble? Like, we haven't gotten anything yet. And a lot of times it's just, yeah, I've got it ready to go. We're waiting on one thing, whatever it may be. But, I mean, it's funny. It becomes so aware of it then, which is really cool. But we want to get that out by 10 o'clock. And then it's really unique here where we can set up their class schedules to be done by 1:30. And that gives us a bulk of the afternoon then to do what we need to do. And so at 1:30, we're going to meet in the classroom. So every player, mine isn't all fancy like theirs, but this is my binder that I take on a daily basis. But every player is given a binder. Inside that binder, there's a notebook. There might be some early handouts that we give them as far as like expectations, resources and whatnot, and kind of the plan of attack for us. So they're going to bring those binders each and every day. And we're going to have some type of theme. So this ranges a little bit. So in the beginning, it's a lot about what is our process and how are we going to prepare. And then it'll shift. So there are times where I showed a clip of Bruno Mars on 60 Minutes. And it was about two things. I wasn't happy with the quality of how our equipment closet was being sorted. Our pitching lab, where we have all of our equipment, was getting a little sloppy. And so that was one point to it, but then also his obsession to his craft. I mean, there's a reason that Bruno Mars, he's really talented, but there's an obsession to that guy's craft. And that's why he's one of the, biggest,
So can you just type in Bruno Mars 60 Minutes and this will pop up?
Yeah, it's an interview that he had on 60 Minutes, and it's about his background. I'd have to find it, but it's about just his background and his time growing up, and he didn't have a whole lot. But then it talks about his processes and how he develops music and his obsession to detail, and how he elevates people around him too, to live up to his standard to make really, really good music. And so to then take that into our culture, if you will, when we were watching this video, I'm like, hey, what do you guys notice about his music studio? Oh, it's immaculate. Okay. You think that's a big part of it? Absolutely. His studio, I mean, everything is just immaculate. Like, it has its place. And he speaks to that in the video, but then also his obsession to his craft. So it gets back into your first question. What is your why? We got to change your lifestyle. You need to be obsessed with this. You need to be obsessed with being great. And that is in all phases of your life. It isn't just how hard you hit a ball or what was your exit velocity today or, what you pulled down on. Hey, I got up at 6 a.m. today. I went over to the calf and I fueled up my body today. Okay. I got this amount of protein. I got this amount of fats. This is the goal I'm looking for. I got this many calories. There's times where, guys, I'm trying to gain weight. What'd you eat for breakfast? I had a Pop-Tart. Okay, man. Well, there's your problem right there. So again, keeping them accountable to it. So again, back to that. So the classroom's really big for us because to me, it turns on their mind, but it also kind of finds our center and it gets everybody on the same page. So it gets back to your accountability question. We're all on the same page right now. We're going to review what happened yesterday, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to do today. Hey, and here's an example of how we're going to live this process, this lifestyle that we're trying to kind of instill in them. And there's a Matthew McConaughey video out there just in terms of life that I thought was really good that we showed our guys. I also think this is big. We're trying to develop husbands. We're trying to develop fathers. I'm one myself. I've got two beautiful children, 2 boys, and I've got a beautiful wife where I completely outkicked my coverage by about 5,000 yards. She's a saint. But again, at some point, baseball's going to end for these guys. So I showed a clip from, I believe it's The Breakup with Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston, where they're in the living room and he's just trying to play video games. He's trying to just veg out. She just made this big meal and like, he just doesn't want to do the dishes. And she finds that to be so like insensitive to her feelings and whatnot. And so we show the scene and it's really cool to like, I showed this and you didn't have that kind of glazed over look by a lot of our guys. It's like they picked it up right away. And I'm like, what are we trying to teach right here when you're watching this video? And they all just said it, gratitude. Show gratitude. And so again, when you're talking about accountability and you're able to show gratitude to a teammate for picking you up or gratitude to somebody that came out to your game in 40-degree weather and you've played in it before, it's not a whole lot of fun to play baseball and what we have to play in, but show gratitude to the people in your life that have put you into this position. I think that's really valuable. So the classroom's big for us. And then we'll take it for us then into our rec center, where to me, that's our block training time. Okay. This is where it's kind of intimate, if you will, where our pitchers are up doing their activation, our hitters go through their daily activation, and then we have, a series of, drills and stations that we have at that time. And I'm lucky, I'm losing one in Sean, but we have a really talented up and coming hitting coach in Drew Sanis, and he'll take over the hitting reins when Sean leaves here. But it allows them to kind of roam through the rec, through the cages, and really just get a pulse on what guys are doing. But that's where kind of our individual one-on-one time is. Myself and Brett Degani, our pitching
So
coach.
you guys intentionally, just to kind of highlight that, you guys intentionally go around and create that one-on-one connection
Absolutely.
during that time.
You spark communication. Instead of just standing over in the corner, yeah, good swing. Hey, what are you feeling there? Hey, I'll come over and be like, hey, how was that test today? And he'll just look at you like, how'd you know about that? Like, guys, you got to remember, the skipper knows everything. No, but it just, it's more than baseball, and it just kind of, it relaxes them a little bit. But then that also can start the conversation as far as, okay, hey, that test is done now. Let's leave it there. Let's talk a little baseball now. This is our fun time, so we don't have to worry about all that other stuff. So that's a big time for us to really spark communication, work on things. It's very intimate. It's in a cage. So whether it's band resistance drills that we're doing, or maybe we're doing some machine work and we have some competitive stuff going on over there, it really kind of starts the day for us. And then when that's done, we've got about 15 to 20 minutes where we're packing everything up. We're transitioning then. And so, and this speaks personally to me. So my oldest son is on the autism spectrum. And so this taught me in terms of communication that not everyone communicates the same way. And how do people handle transitions? And sometimes people don't, go from one task to the other and just seamlessly, just as junior college athletes don't sometimes, 18, 19-year-olds don't. They need a little time where, hey, I need to kind of tune out right now before we go and do the next thing. So this is a time for us where we're packing up, we're getting ready to go, and we kind of make it a little competitive. All right, who can get over to the stadium first and get everything set up? Or, can pitchers be done with their stuff and get everything set up so we're rocking and rolling? It makes it a little fun and competitive that way. But it gives them an opportunity then to just kind of, okay, we're away from practice for a little bit, kind of reset my brain, get in the car, listen to some tunes, okay, and transition then into what we're trying to do. When we go outside, it becomes a little bit more random. Could be a team defense thing that we're going to do. Could be a live ball situation that we're doing that day. It could be a bunch of machine work with defensive work that we're doing. So then that becomes more of our team time and our more of our random time. It's not going to look all pretty when we're out there on the field, just as a game. It doesn't look pretty all the time. It doesn't go to plan. And so they can adjust that way as well. And then
and kind of just to kind of highlight that part again, except in a different way, like you're allowing them time to kind of start and complete their transformation routine is what I would call that. Kind of like how Clark Kent goes to Superman, right? Like you need time to switch from one area of your life to another. And, by giving them that, and do you talk about that with them? Have you made that like a conscious part of their life? Like, okay, like, hey, this is your time to go from student to athlete. Use it wisely.
Yes. It's like finding your alter ego.
That's what you guys call it?
Actors do it. Some of the most powerful people in business or in athletics, in politics do it. I probably do it as a coach as well. Like, I want to try to stay as genuine as possible, but when I go home, I'm not a coach. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I don't want to think about baseball. I want to think about my kids and put my time into them. Just as these guys, when baseball's over, I still want you to remember that you're a baseball player, but hey, throw that uniform away, that bat at bat, that, hey, I didn't have a great practice, or hey, I had a great practice, awesome, learn from it. But now go be a student athlete, go do what you got to do. Go play some Fortnite for a while. Go play NHL hockey for a while. Go hang out with your girlfriend. Go hang out with the guys, and kind of transition a little bit. Absolutely, I think you have to. That's healthy. We had an individual the other day, and he was really frustrated just on his progress in terms of hitting. And our assistant kind of nailed it on the head. He said, "You think about this 24/7. You don't allow yourself to just step away from it a little bit, clear your mind, and think about something else." and just go do something else and get your mind away from it. You consume yourself with this. And I think sometimes as we expect so much out of these guys in terms of their overall performance, and they look around and see other guys hitting a ball harder, hitting a ball farther, throwing a ball harder, whatever it is, and then they consume themselves with it. And now they almost work too hard to a point where they're not progressing. So you got to work a little bit smarter. You got to be able to have that time where there's a release and just a way to sort of clear your mind.
Mm-hmm. And even taking that into the game of baseball, I'll take it into the game of baseball by taking it outside of the game of baseball. Annika Sorenstam, one of the greatest female golfers of all time, she talks about that exact thing within the game of golf. Like, you can't be thinking about golf the entire time that you're out there on the golf course.
Yep.
She's like, you need to focus and you need to let yourself go, space out, and then focus back in on the next shot. And like, I mean, her lowest score of all time, I think, is like a 59.
Right.
You know,
right.
and I think there's a great book called Every Shot Must Have a Purpose, and I read this story in there, but actually during one of those very low rounds that she shot, I'm not sure if it was the 59 round or something, but it was low 60s for sure.
Right.
Before that round, she told her coach, she's like, I am dead today. She's like, my brain feels like it's mush right now. Like, I don't even want to play golf. And her coach just reminded her that, hey, you don't actually have to play 3-4 hours of golf. Like, what you need to play is you need to play 14 minutes of golf.
Absolutely.
And she's like, so when you get up to the ball, just focus on that one swing. That takes you less than, a few seconds, and then you can space out again.
Right.
And she wound up doing exactly that and having a great round. And in the game of baseball, it's the same way. And I like how you said, like, talking about like leaving that at bat with the last at bat.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the transformation routines that I talk about with teams is, when does an at bat start and when does it end? Defining when those two happen in the game. So it starts when I'm putting on my batting gloves, and then my at bat might not end until I take off my stuff. So if my batting gloves are still on, if my helmet is still on after a strikeout, that means I'm still in that at bat. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I do that physical action, it's mentally reminding me that, okay, on to the next phase of the game, whether that being a teammate or playing the field.
So one reference to the alter egos was Todd Herman. He's an author, coach, and entrepreneur, and he has a training company that specializes in this. And he talks about alter egos all the time. And it evolved for him because he had to go speak in front of these groups. And I think it's the Friends episode where Ross goes and teaches at a college or a university, and he starts speaking in an English accent because that made him more comfortable. That was his alter ego. As silly as that sounds, you've got to put yourself into a frame of mind, if you will, where if you have to have that alter ego to go take the mound or to hit or whatever it may be, then so be it. It's okay to help kind of elevate your performance, if you will. But I think the thing that you're touching on too is just routines. Guys have no routines when they come in here, man. Like it's you watch how they breathe. Again, how meditation, visualization, they know none of that, or there's no intent behind that. And so, like, when we talk about routines, like I'll tell to our pitchers, okay, both starters and relievers, give me your routine for when we get to the ballpark on a game day. So immediately, what's the first thing they do? They go into like, well, when I'm ready to stretch. And I'm like, no, man, I'm talking about the second you wake up. Like the second you roll out of bed, what is your routine? And even take it even further. What time are you going to go to bed? Again, just routine more than anything. It doesn't start when you get to the ballpark. It starts as soon as the day before when you go to bed. That's when your routine starts. And so when you take it that far, it's easier to be able to go from at bat to at bat, to pitch when you've developed those routines, and you become very in tune with that routine as well, rather than just, I do a couple stretches and I throw this. No, I want to know, what are you doing in your activation, down to the detail. What foam rolling are you doing? When are you going to roll it out? All that stuff. When they have that ownership into it, then being able to transition from at bat to at bat or pitch to pitch, from success to failure, becomes a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Yu Darvish this year was talking about his routine and how when he had that stretch of like 7 or 8 games where he struck out a ton and walked none, basically. He talked about how he took his routine to a whole nother level. And I'm like, you Darvish taking his routine to another level? This is a Japanese player. Like,
Right.
those guys are already super routine.
Exactly.
What could he possibly be doing more? But
Right.
I mean, I don't know exactly what he was doing, but he did talk about how he took it to a whole nother level. And that's the reason why he was that much more focused and that much more prepared for each game, to allow himself to like pitch at his level, at his potential, and actually reach that level. So I thought that was really cool, and I completely agree. Routines are huge, and when you talk about those routines outside of the game, which are a little bit easier to talk about, then when it comes to the in the game routines, like those become, again, even more, they become more aware of them consciously, so they can change them intentionally to perform at their highest level.
So I'm looking at a sheet, maybe just sparked something for me as, and I'll pull it up here. You might see it or not, but I can send you this too. So it's just a daily process sheet for us. At the top, it says process, prepare, and perform. And then in a lower font, I just have WIN, what is important now? And so in today's generation, where to me, they are looking so far ahead at certain things. So for instance, you get some guys that come in here like, I want to be a Division I baseball player. And they're over there looking at, just recently had a pitcher sign with Oregon. He's really talented. He's come a long way. But they're all trying to be that guy right now. Well, they have to understand the backstory to him and how he got to that point, where they're so consumed with the future rather than what's important right now. So something that we ask our guys, and we tell them to log this, and I put down, how will you make today the most important day of your career? So what's your routine going to be for the day? What are you going to work on today? What do you learn from yesterday that you're going to make important today, as if this is the most important day of your career? But then also, you talked about accountability earlier. What things will you do today to make this day the most important day for your teammates' career? And I think that helps elevate the awareness around our group and again, the accountability factor. And then I always remind them too, what's your why? What's going to help you through this today? What's going to motivate you to keep that motivation going, to be able to stick to that and stay true to that every single day? And if it doesn't go well, okay, how are you going to learn from that? And we log a lot. I mean, we ask our guys to log a lot of things and really keep this on their own too, to where again they're taking that ownership of their career and their group.
That's excellent, and I think that's huge. I talk about journaling all the time, and for you to intentionally sit them down and allow them to journal and get their thoughts on paper, that's going to help organize themselves in a way that just keeping it in your head will not do for you.
It becomes a little more organic that way. And my thought process too, and I got this from Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt University, who I have a cool story about that, where I came off the stage at ABCA. I spoke on Rapsodo this past clinic. And when I walked off stage, the first person I saw when I got back there was Tim Corbin, and I about fell over because Vanderbilt's the mecca of college baseball, in my opinion, and Coach Corbin has done such a great job because, again, yeah, they're super talented, but his investment into what their classroom is and how much he values that is where I got a lot of this. And what he said is, when you have a notebook in front of you, they see it, they learn it, they write it down, they learn it, and then when they can go back into their journals, they learn it again. And I think, like he said, obviously Vanderbilt's a very highly regarded academic institution, but we're not only a baseball program, we're an institute of higher learning. We have to be able to have a classroom setting to be able to teach our guys these things that we want to do to help their overall, not only player performance, but just human performance more than anything, and really have a holistic approach into their daily development as a human being and as a player and as a student.
Yeah, that's huge. Learning it 3 times in a row is a lot better than just once, and having that journal. And that is a pretty cool story about how you saw him right off the bat, and he was the one. This is one of the guys that's going to go down as one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he's talking about the investment that they're putting into the mental side of the game. And how many people talk about the mental side of the game, but then they don't actually implement it, and it's like it needs to be talked about more and implemented more into the daily lives of the players. And it starts by the coaches putting it in there.
Absolutely.
You know, the players aren't going to do it on their own. Like, you need to lead them and show them the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to how players want to be somewhere now, you know, but they have to put in the work to get there.
Right.
Do you know the name Sean Mania? He pitches for the A's.
Yeah.
So we were play catch partners at Indiana State.
Yeah.
And actually freshman year, so I was a soft lefty. I mean, like, I remember my sophomore year pitching against Cal State Fullerton in the regional, and I go out there and I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling good today. I feel like I'm pumping. And I throw my warm-up pitch. I turn around, look at the scoreboard, and it says 83. And I'm like, all right, stick to your game. Stick to your game. You know? Right. But I actually threw harder than him our freshman year when we came in. He was like 79, 82, and I was 80, 83. And then, you know, a year later, or a year and a half, I guess, later, you know, he's throwing 98 in the Cape.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody wants to see that guy throwing 98, but they forget how long and how much work he put into his game and everything off the field, on the field, to actually get there. Right. And I mean, like the preparation and the things that he put in on a daily basis and what he sacrificed on a daily basis, or I wouldn't say sacrifice, actually. That was the wrong word. I like to use the word decision. Like, it was a decision he made. You know, when you talk about sacrifice, and again, this is like a kind of a word thing, I guess, but sacrifice means you're giving up something else to get there. You know, and he didn't think he was giving up anything else. Like, it was just, that was his decision. He was going to do this because he wanted to get to here. Right. And I think sometimes when you think of things in terms of sacrifice, it becomes like, you might start to hold a grudge against that area of your life. So anyway, so like, he made that decision to become something and someone, and he put in the work that was needed in order to get there. So that is pretty cool. That, like, that might be another story for your for your guys to just, like, you know, focus on what's happening right now if you want to get to here. You know, the more you focus on the process, the better chance you get of reaching that actual outcome goal.
So we have a similar story to that, and I actually show this what is process. And so a young man named Brandon Williamson came out of Welcome, Minnesota, kind of the same as Sean, you know, 6'5", 6'6", throwing 80 poo out of high school, and walked on at our place. I think was going to go into the Marines until one of our alum contacted me about him, and I went and watched like a town ball game of his. I was like, yeah, you know, we'll give it a shot. Not too many 6'5" lefties falling off trees in our area, but over time, I still have this video on my YouTube, and it's actually classified under comedy because of the backstory now. But he was throwing like 81, 82 miles an hour. This is like an exit Christmas break bullpen. And throughout that year, then he began to mature a little bit more. Our assistant coach at the time would talk to him about, like, hey man, you got to tie your shoes when you come to practice. Like, he would come in like, you know, shoes would be untied, you know, just like, hey man, like, you want to pitch to the next level, you got to tie your shoes. We still joke about that to this day. But so Brandon just continued to evolve. He went and pitched in the Northwoods League his freshman year summer, and really learned a lot about himself, not necessarily his limitations, but what he did well. Came back a sophomore year, signed with TCU, was a draft pick, and then last year was taken in the second round out of TCU and is now one of the Mariners' top prospects. But, you know, here's a kid, again, when it comes down to process, well, everyone thinks he's the finished product when he came in here. It's not true. I mean, he had to learn so much mentally. He had to learn so much about just his daily process, what he did in the weight room. Kid never saw a J-band in his life till he got here. And again, I think that's the story that we sell a lot of times with guys, because we're not San Jacinto. We're not pulling in these kids that are just, you know, kickback blue chippers, and you know, you just kind of, and not that they don't do a good job developing, because they do an unbelievable job. But we're getting guys that are a little bit raw, that, you know, they just need some process. They need some structure. But the hard part is with guys now is they want it instantaneously. Well, that's not going to happen. And you got to continue to paint that story. And stories like Brandon and Sean are great examples of that, that if you just stick to your processes and, like you said, make the right choices, make the choices that you need to make, and edit your life a little bit, then that could be you.
Yeah. One great question I like to ask students or student athletes is like, hey, is that decision going to help us win championships or lose championships?
Right.
You know,
right.
like, everybody wants that ring, and it's like, hey man, like, is that going to help us get the ring, or is that going to help us, kind of walk further away from it?
Right.
When it might be something as easy as like choosing water over pop at lunch.
Yep.
And it could be that. But I want to keep these kind of to an hour. Awesome. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to, having a future conversation about similar stuff as well. But
absolutely, Tyler. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been cool.
Yeah, thanks for sharing with me. And I think there's a lot of strategies and processes that people can implement immediately, like I talked about at the beginning, which is the kind of the goal of this talk. But anyway, so what's the kind of question I end with all the time is, what's your number one takeaway from our little discussion here today?
I think just, again, that there's so many stories out there of people that want to invest in player development. And I think, when you see your passion, and I've listened to your podcast as well, when you see your passion into genuinely trying to give resources to help people, I think that's the biggest takeaway that I take away from today, is just the discussion, to be able to compare stories and compare ideas to, again, elevate us as coaches to be able to empower people. I think that's our job as leaders, and that's what I take away from today. And I think it's really impressive what you're doing, and it's really helpful because people listen, man. And I think the concept to put information out there that people can grab, I think is outstanding, and it's really helping our profession.
Dang. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for, I've given you a bunch of compliments today, but like, just again, continuing on, like the way that you're going about it is really inspiring. And I think a lot of coaches will listen to this and see that, okay, like here's a guy who has the wins now, and not only that, but I've really liked that story about how, you had to trust the process,
right,
in order to get there. And I always talk about that, like trusting the process, just going step by step, and it will pay off. So it's kind of cool that you're on the other end of that. You've kind of like just kept digging for gold and trusting the process. So thank you.
We still are, man. We still are.
Yeah, keep at it, dude. It's a never ending thing either.
Right.
That's the great part about it.
Right.
But all right, well, I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it, man.
All right, see ya.
Have a good one.